Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
You will hear adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And the Paranormal with Jason.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. Oh, and you just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by the Empire State Building. They say the Empire State Building was tall. So what? It just proves that New York builders didn't know when to stop at a good story. And now, here is a good story. I hope.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Morning, Deputy.
Ted just called in and said he'd be late. Springfield bus from Cleveland broke down just outside of Cleveland and won't be in till 11 o'clock.
Well, I guess you and I can handle what little business we get here in Springville until then. Oh, Sheriff's Office. Speaking. James Coburn shot? Be right there.
Sheriff, the bullet entered his right temple just over the eye, passing through the head and made its exit from the back of the neck.
I knew this would happen to James.
You knew this would happen, Miss Alice?
Yes. You see, Sheriff, some man in Cleveland had attempted to blackmail James because of an earlier romance, and James had threatened to turn the blackmailer over to the police. Because of that, his life was threatened. I had him come here to Springville to hide out for a while.
Deputy, have any strange men been reported in town the last few days, or have you seen any suspicious characters that might have been trying to locate James Coburn?
Oh, haven't heard of a soul, except some bum that must have dropped off a freight. A short, swarthy-looking guy.
That sounds just like the Cleveland man. James described him to me one day.
Don't recall anyone saying he'd inquired about Coburn.
James always seemed like a pretty upright man to me.
Oh, James was a very quiet man, Sheriff. He was just unfortunate enough to have been tied up with this affair in his youth. And then this gangster had to try a shakedown on him and ruin all our happiness. We were to be married. We were going to be married tomorrow and go to Cincinnati to live. James had a job offered him there.
I'm sorry. This has been a shock to you, then.
Yes, it has, Sheriff. James had written me last week. He asked me to come on the 8:30 bus today. Then we were going on to Cincinnati this afternoon. Oh, I was so happy. I packed all my things and left Cleveland on the bus early this morning. I rushed right out here only to find him dead. Oh, if only he'd gone to Cincinnati months ago as I begged him.
It would have been just the same, Miss Alice.
Well, it couldn't have been. He'd have been safe there.
No. No, you'd have tracked him there and murdered him, just like you did here.
Do you know why the sheriff accused Alice of murdering James Coburn? In just a moment, we shall find out. But first...
Okay, well first I have to ask why James Coburn is doing a bit part in this 5-minute mystery. Second, I have to ask how in the world does the sheriff know that she did it? We've not been told much about the murder scene, and there appears to be a lack of motive. There is one very obscure clue, but if you're like me, you missed it. It was right at the beginning. But you know what they say. It's all about the bus, isn't it? Let's go back and see.
And now for the solution to our mystery.
Alice, James Coburn was shot by someone facing him as he sat in the chair. Obviously, someone from whom he didn't fear violence, therefore not a man. You were the blackmailer if anyone was, Alice. He probably laughed at your threats today, went back to reading, and you shot him. You said that you arrived this morning at 8:30 on the bus from Cleveland. You couldn't have. That bus broke down, and one of my own deputies is still stranded outside of Cleveland on that bus. Come along.
Not a man? Oh boy, it's a good thing this mystery was made 70 years ago. Today's woman is more than capable of striking fear into a man's heart. Believe me, I know. This 5-minute mystery was brought to you by the Empire State Building.
What's that you say?
Welcome to the podcast. Today's show is all about one of the tallest buildings in the world.
What is that, the Empire State Building?
Yes, it is. We have 3 listener stories that take place there and a brand new Johnny, Is It True? That just might teach you a thing or two about it.
What else you got?
Well, I have a story from up north from Sergeant Preston that should be pretty exciting.
Are you serious?
I am. This past couple of weeks, the Ron's Amazing Stories email address has been under attack by a spam bomber. I'm not sure who decided to sign up the address for everything under the sun, but whoever it was failed. The reason people do this is in hopes that you will make a mistake and they can steal your account, or they just don't like you. I hope it's the former. Google came to my rescue and things appear to be back to normal. The reason I mention it here is that it's entirely possible I may have missed a few of your emails. For that, I apologize. If I didn't get back to you on something, please resend your note. As you know, we are fast approaching the 500th episode of the show. I'm working on something pretty special, but I need your help to pull it off. I'm looking for stories about time slips or time loss. They can be anything from the standard UFO type to encounters in time. Just use the main website to let me know that you have one, and I thank you in advance. That's all I have for this time. Let's get on with the show. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, computer, Kindle. Whatever you have, you can listen to Audible on it. So what am I listening to right now? Interview with the Robot by Lee Bacon. This is an incredibly fun book to listen to. It is an Audible original, which means it has a cast of actors rather than a single narrator. The story is a science fiction adventure that introduces a unique heroine who seeks the truth about herself. Eve looks like an ordinary 12-year-old girl, but there's nothing ordinary about her. Here's a brief clip from the book.
All right, let's begin. This is case file 6409, NYPD 13th Precinct Station, Interrogation Room 2. I'm Petra Amos with Child Welfare Services, and I'm here with... This is the part where you tell me your name.
Eve.
Last name?
I don't have one.
You don't know your last name?
I was never given one.
And where are your parents, Eve?
I don't have parents.
Foster parents?
Don't have those either.
How old are you, Eve?
I appear to be 12 years old.
Appear?
My actual age is complicated.
Are you lying to me?
No, ma'am.
Because if you are, you should know you can get into big trouble for lying to someone in my position.
I understand that, but I'm not lying.
Let's take a step back. Explain to me why you were arrested.
For stealing a shirt.
A men's XL t-shirt with text on the front that reads, "Retired and loving it." Why would a 12-year-old girl even want a shirt like that?
I'm not 12. I just...
Look, 12. Yeah, you said that already. But that's not all you stole, was it?
No, ma'am.
Why don't you tell me exactly what you did to end up here?
Well, so earlier today, I arrived at Big Apple Gifts.
Excuse me. What do you think you're doing? You can't just put that shirt in your backpack. Another shirt? Wow. Okay. And now you're just... Yep. You're going for more. Hey, little girl. I'm right here, you know. I can see you. Put down the keychain. Okay, that's it. Security!
I'm looking at an invoice for all the objects you attempted to steal. 6 novelty t-shirts, 2 Statue of Liberty keychains, 1 yellow taxi chew toy for dogs, and 3 pairs of I Heart New York boxer shorts. And you did all this right in front of the clerk, with a security guard standing 10 feet away.
I guess I'm not so great at the whole criminal thing.
Interview with the Robot comes to life with a multicast performance including Aline Stevens as Eve, Ellen Archer as Petra Amos, Jonathan Davis as David Sharp, Ken T. Collins as Emery Sharp, John Hurley as a Boswell employee, Aaron Mallon as a device, robot, and female barista, and Stephen Bell Davis as a store clerk, hotel employee, and an office clerk. This audiobook is so much fun, I had to listen to it in one sitting. The acting is amazing. The story is something that you're going to want to listen to over and over again, and you can own it today. Here's what Audible has set up for us. Audible is offering a free audiobook and 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can get Interview with the Robot for free. Thank you, Audible. And now it's time for your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
Our story this week is not a personal experience, but rather a submission for Johnny Is It True? The story was suggested to me by listener Mike Hardcord of New York City. Mark is a collector of spooky tales that he plans to publish in a book titled The Haunted of New York. I did a little research on his suggestion and found an article written by GhostGhoul titled The Most Beautiful Suicide. Does Evelyn McHale haunt the Empire State Building? It comes from the blog site Ghosts and Ghouls and is dated May 8, 2012. I will have a link to the article in the show notes. Here is GhostGhoul's post. Though suicide is a common element in tales of lost love and heartbreak, the subject usually ends it all because of the lover's death or betrayal. However, there are exceptions. A tortured young woman is said to haunt New York City's Empire State Building, took her life for an entirely different reason. On May 1, 1947, 23-year-old Evelyn McHale leapt from the top of the Empire State Building. Her body landed on a United Nations limousine over 1,000 feet below, obliterating the roof of the car and horrifying pedestrians passing by the iconic landmark. The commotion drew photography student Robert Wiles, who snapped a photo of McHale just minutes after her death. Though Evelyn plummeted 86 stories or 1,050 feet, Wiles' photo reveals a calm, beautiful corpse, eyes closed, fingers still clutching a pearl necklace. McHale looks as if she could be sleeping, but the limousine's mangled roof and shattered glass tells a different story. Weil's shocking photo ran on the May 12th issue of Life magazine with a caption that read, "At the bottom of the Empire State Building, the body of Evelyn McHale reposes calmly in grotesque mire, her falling body punched into the top of a car." Evelyn's desperate act became known as the most beautiful suicide, and newspapers around the world published the haunting image. The photo even inspired Andy Warhol's Suicide Fallen Body serigraph as part of his Death and Disaster series. So why did McHale leap to her death? She apparently didn't think she was fit to be a wife. "He's much better without me," Evelyn wrote in a suicide note discovered at the scene. "I don't think I would be a good wife for anybody." The he in the note was Barry Rhodes, an ex-GI studying in Lafayette, Pennsylvania. McHale and Rhodes had planned to be married the following month, and the two had just celebrated Rhodes' 24th birthday. Although one might think that Rhodes would have noticed something off about his bride-to-be, he was as shocked as anyone. He told reporters, "When I kissed her goodbye, she was happy and normal as any girl about to be married." It seems McHale's motives will be forever a mystery. Although it's been 70 years since Evelyn's death, some believe that she still haunts the Empire State Building. Visitors have spotted a distraught woman dressed in clothing from the 1940s. Wearing bright red lipstick, the haunted woman reportedly paces the observation deck on the 86th floor, her eyes bright with tears. After a few minutes of fretful pacing, the mysterious woman rushes through the safety fence and jumps over the edge, much to the horror of the observers. Is the tortured jumper Evelyn McHale or another grieving woman from the same period? It seems the identity of the leaping ghost, like Evelyn's reason for jumping, will remain a mystery. My thanks to GhostGhoul for that article. I will have links to it and photos of the Life magazine photo in the show notes. I do have a follow-up story I found on Reddit. It was posted by I Am, Therefore Leave Me Alone, all one word. I Am responded to a post asking if anyone had any ghost stories from the Empire State Building. This person wrote this. Yes, I was on the observation deck in May of 1993. I was there with my brother, mom, and aunt. It was our last stop of the day. We were alone on top and were taking turns on the telescope looking out over New York Harbor. My brother saw a woman just pop on the roof. She looked around for a minute and then ran to the safety fence and disappeared. We all laughed at him, but he swears he wasn't lying. Later on, when we got back to North Fork, he went to the library and found a story in Life magazine that confirmed at least part of his story. While I didn't believe it at the time, I freaked out after reading that Life article. Well, I don't have any proof that I Am's post is true. What I found intriguing about it was the event took place in May, and keep in mind that Evelyn jumped on May 12, 1947. Coincidence? Probably not. Well, those are your stories for this time. If you have a story that you want to share, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com and click on the story submission banner. Fill out the form, name your story, and tell me where you're from. Tell us your story so it becomes our story.
As read by Amazing Stories, read by amazing people.
This time on As Read By, we have a story sent in by Paul Hart. This one takes us back to another place and another time. I decided to read it as part of As Read By because, well, we've never had anything quite like it. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Hello, Ron. My name is Paul, and I've been listening to you for a little over a year. I love your podcast. The production is professional, the show is interesting, and you have a great voice. I live on Long Island, New York, around 50 miles east of the Big Apple. I listen on my Kindle in bed and generally fall asleep, so it takes several nights to catch a complete program. Since I've never had a paranormal experience, I felt that I couldn't contribute a story. But maybe I can send something in regardless. For lack of a better name, I think I will call it Paul and Buddy's Excellent Adventure. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to work in television. It might have started around the age of 9 or 10. I grew up in the Detroit area. There were a number of kids' shows that we watched, but my favorite was Lunch with Soupy, starring the great Soupy Sales before he became famous. Soupy was a god to us kids. One of the things I liked best about that show, besides his humor, was listening to his crew cracking up after his jokes. I decided then and there I wanted a career in television. Years passed. I graduated from electronics school. Since this was 1967, I was due to get drafted and instead signed up with the U.S. Coast Guard for 4 years. When I got out, I worked in the electronics field for several years. However, I could not get a job in the extremely competitive field of broadcast television. I had sent out over 50 letters to every station throughout the Northeast and never received even a no for an answer. Finally, one day I did get my break. I was working for a company having a tough time. Their business was failing, and every Friday 4 or 5 people would get laid off. This was going on for a few weeks, and I knew it was a matter of time until it would be my turn. I usually bought the New York Times every Sunday. Their classified ads would have 2.5 or 3 columns of help wanted ads just in electronics. That one Sunday, there was a huge ad for Television Transmitter Technician, WCBS TV. I sent in my cover letter and resume. Several days later, I received a letter back from them stating that they would like to talk to me. I interviewed and got the job and put my foot in the door. The job required babysitting the television and FM broadcast transmitters. I kept an eye on things and corrected any problems. The first words of advice I ever heard was, "You may sometimes need to do something that could cause us to lose airtime, but whatever you do, don't do it during a commercial." Of course, I asked why, since people normally leave the room during that time to go to the bathroom or grab a snack. They made me realize that commercials are the bread and butter of TV. One thing people don't realize is that maintaining those towers is a 24/7 job. That is especially true if you're new. This means working different shifts with different days off, which would change every few weeks. This also meant working midnights, weekends, and holidays like Christmas, etc. That is exactly how I wound up working the 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. shift on Sunday, July 4th, 1976, the bicentennial of the United States. We were located on the 83rd floor of the Empire State Building. A normal part of our job involved occasionally climbing the tower to inspect and sometimes do maintenance on the antennas. Besides our station, there were channels 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 31, 41, and 47, along with every FM station out there. We also had specialized microwave antennas for live feeds. Getting to the antenna was safe. We would take an elevator to the 102nd floor. From there, we would climb a ladder up 2 more floors until you opened a trap door on the roof. Climbing the lower part of the structure was like walking in a stairwell. The actual roof is about the size of a baseball pitcher's mound. Inside that mound is a caved structure consisting of several flights of stairs surrounded by a wire mesh. The actual antennas were outside that mesh. We did not work on those antennas directly. Instead, they hired people who must have been daredevils and were paid ungodly amounts of money. Getting back to that bicentennial day, there was an unbelievable celebration. New York Harbor and the Hudson River were absolutely jammed with naval vessels, tall ships, yachts, and who knows what else. We were televising the proceedings, so I was enjoying the programming. One of our other techs, Buddy, was a friend of mine and had the day off. He was a huge photography nut and wanted to be up on the roof that day capturing history. He brought along his 3 SLR cameras, tripods, film, and boxes of equipment. I had a fairly simple 35mm point-and-shoot. We had arranged to meet on the roof after I got off work to take photographs. After my watch, I climbed to the top of the building to find my friend outside the protective structure of the roof. My first reaction was, uh-oh. But then I got up my courage and also went on the outside. The weather was dead calm. Absolutely no wind of any sort. I was a bit disappointed because it was hazy. I think visibility was at best 4 or 5 miles. Both of us were snapping as many photos as we could. We wound up sitting on the edge of the roof, 1,250 feet above the street, with our legs dangling down. I took one picture of my legs and nothing but the street far below. Whenever my wife saw that picture, she would freak, and years later, so would I. Buddy and I were blissfully snapping away, sitting on that roof, and waving at helicopters. I'm sure people thought that we must be crazy. Meanwhile, the sky is gradually getting darker when suddenly I see a flash of lightning and 10 seconds later, hear the thunder. My first thought is all those pictures I've seen of lightning hitting the Empire State Building. My second was to leave immediately. My third was that I better help my friend. The problem was that he had all this equipment that had to go down the ladders. A person could probably only carry one box at a time, and it might take 3 or 4 minutes for a round trip. Meanwhile, this squall is rapidly approaching. The end of the story was that we did not get hit by lightning, but were frozen and soaking wet. Buddy and I went our separate ways. We did work together at the transmitter from time to time, and later local news crews where we sometimes partnered. He stayed in the news and, at last I heard, was living in Miami. I wound up on the more technical end of things. I left what was a great job and went to another network for a shorter commute. I'm retired now and am in my 70s, and I always realize how lucky I was doing a job that I liked. Paul Hart, Long Island, New York. Well, Paul, that is something special. No, it's not paranormal, but it does take us back to another time. I can just see you in my mind's eye and Buddy waving at those helicopters. I too remember the bicentennial celebration. I also remember watching those very same ships, yachts, and helicopters in New York from the safety of my television right here in my hometown of Vancouver, Washington. I decided to look up the weather for that day on New York Harbor. Here is what I found. July 4th, New York's bicentennial celebration, which included a parade of tall ships in New York Harbor, took place under partly cloudy skies with temperatures a bit cooler than average, high of 82, low of 63. A brief thunderstorm put a slight damper on the festivities during the mid-afternoon, but it produced very little rainfall. How about that? Thank you, Paul, for sharing this slice of history.
Johnny, is this true?
As you know by now, I like to surf the internet to find the strange and unusual. I do this in the name of the podcast, but the truth is, I would do it anyway, even if there was no podcast. What you're about to hear is...
Johnny, is this true?
I will tell you a story and then ask the question, did I make it up or is it true? Your job is to decide. Let's get started.
Johnny, is this true?
This time on Johnny, Is It True, we have a follow-up to Paul's story. What I have done is collect some tall tales about the Empire State Building. Your job is to decide if what I tell you is true or did I make it up. Word of warning, if you are afraid of heights, you just might want to tie yourself down. But before we get to the stories, here is a bit of history. In the late 1920s, as New York's economy boomed like never before, builders were in a mad dash to build the world's largest skyscraper. The main competition was between the Bank of Manhattan and the Chrysler Building, which was an elaborate Art Deco structure conceived by car mogul Walter Chrysler as a monument to me. Both towers tried to best each other by adding more floors to their design, and the race really heated up in August of 1929 when General Motors and former New York Governor Al Smith announced plans for the Empire State Building. Upon learning that it would be 1,000 feet tall, Chrysler changed his plans a final time and fixed a stainless steel spire to the top of his skyscraper. The addition saw the Chrysler Building to a record 1,048 feet. But unfortunately for Chrysler, General Motors simply went back to the drawing board and returned with an even taller design for the Empire State Building. When completed in 1931, the Colossus loomed 1,250 feet over the streets of mid-Manhattan. It would remain the world's tallest building for nearly 40 years. Now let's get to those stories about this remarkable achievement. Story 1. The Empire State Building was originally designed to be a stopping station for the Goodyear blimp. Bold statement, but is it true? It is. By far the most unusual aspect of the building's design concerned its 200-foot tower. Convinced that transatlantic air travel was going to be the wave of the future, the building's owners originally constructed the mast as a docking port for the lighter-than-air dirigibles. The harebrained scheme called for the airships to maneuver alongside the building and tether themselves to a winching apparatus. Passengers would then exit via an open-air gangplank, check in at the customs office, and make their way to the streets of Manhattan in a mere 7 minutes. Despite early enthusiasm for the project, the high winds near the building's rooftop proved to be all but impossible for pilots to navigate. The closest thing to a landing came in September 1931 when a small dirigible tethered itself to the spire for 5 minutes. 2 weeks later, a Goodyear blimp dropped a stack of newspapers on the roof as part of a publicity stunt. However, the airship plan was abandoned shortly thereafter. Story 2. When finished, the building was a huge success, bringing in millions of dollars and hundreds of businesses clamoring to get office space. It truly was amazing. Or was it? It was a flop. The Empire State Building was primarily designed to house corporate offices, but it got off to a rocky start thanks to the 1929 stock market crash and the onset of the Great Depression. Less than 25% of the building's retail space was occupied upon its opening in 1931. This earned it the nickname the Empty State Building. The building's owners were reduced to engineering publicity stunts in order to get renters, including hosting a 1932 seance that tried to contact the ghost of Thomas Edison from the 82nd floor. It wasn't until World War II that the building finally became profitable. Story 3. The building had its problems over the years, and one of them was when a B-25 bomber crashed into it. A bomber into the tower? This didn't happen, did it? This is true. On the morning of July 28, 1945, while flying an Army B-25 bomber towards the New York's LaGuardia Airport, Army Lieutenant Colonel William F. Smith became disoriented in a heavy fog and drifted over Midtown Manhattan. The World War II combat veteran managed to dodge several skyscrapers, but was unable to avoid plowing into the 78th and 79th floors of the Empire State Building at 200 miles per hour. The crash triggered a massive explosion and sent debris careening through the building's interior. Smith and 2 crewmen were killed, as were 11 people inside the building. A 4-alarm fire broke out on several floors, but firefighters managed to extinguish it in just 40 minutes. Amazingly, the undamaged sections of the building were reopened for business just 2 days later. How about that? Story 4. An inflatable King Kong was attached to the Empire State Building for the film's 50th anniversary, with mixed results. Now, did this one happen? It did indeed. Of the more than 90 movies featuring the Empire State Building, none is more famous than the 1933 King Kong. The film ends with the giant ape scaling the skyscraper and being attacked by swarming biplanes. The original scene was shot in a studio, but for the film's 50th anniversary in April 1983, a balloon company tried to recreate it by attaching an inflatable King Kong to the Empire State's mooring mast. Unfortunately, the $150,000 stunt didn't go as planned. The 84-foot Kong balloon suffered a tear while being inflated, ruining the plan to have it buzzed by vintage aircraft. It was finally inflated a few days later, but stayed on the building for only a short time before another rip forced the project to be scrapped altogether. Sad, because it would have been a sight to behold. Well, that's it for this edition of Johnny Is It True? It was brought to you by Gladys Goodies. Great treats for your pet to eat. If you have any concept or stories that you want to share for this segment, head on over to ronsamazingstories.com and click on the Contact tab. Any of your suggestions are welcome, and I'll read them if I can. Are you ready for another story? This one is being brought to us by Gladys Goodies. Good treats for your dog to eat. They use all natural products with no sugar, preservatives, salts, or harmful ingredients. So check out their online store at GladysGoodies.com. That is GladysGoodies.com. And don't forget to use our very own promo code, RONS, to get a 20% discount on all of your purchases. That is RONS. Thank you, Gladys. Our featured story takes place in the far north. It comes from the OTR series Challenge of the Yukon. In today's tale, we hear a bit about the early days of crime solving and the smarts of a husky known as King. The episode is titled Murder on Train Time, and it first aired on September 23rd, 1943.
the challenge of the Yukon. On King, on you husky! King, the swiftest and strongest of Eskimo lead dogs, blazes the trail through storm and snow for Sergeant Preston as he meets the challenge of the Yukon. Sergeant Preston was typical of the small band of Northwest Mounted Police who preserved law and order in the Yukon during the gold rush of '98. That was the year that brought over 50,000 men swarming into the Klondike region, and the greed for gold led to frequent violence and bloodshed. But in spite of the odds against them, the force preserved a splendid record in maintaining the right. The challenge of the North was answered, and justice ruled triumphant. Train Junction's name told its whole story. One of the few locomotives in the North ran through the rich, boisterous settlement, lying at the far end of a wide horseshoe bend that the tracks made around Skillet Lake.
There she comes.
Hey, you sure? Can't see a thing myself.
It is. Stopping for water across the lake.
Well, Sam, I'll say this much. There's no arguing with your eyes.
I expect she'll be over here in 10 minutes or so.
Oh, it's getting dark. You know, it's a wonder that thing don't lose its way.
Hi, Sergeant Preston. Come to see the engine pulling in, too?
Well, not exactly, Sam. Just happen to be around here.
Never miss seeing it myself. Say, there's Lance Brown. Hey, Lance.
Hello, Sam. Be right over.
You know, as long as I've been watching this train here, I never rode in one.
Why don't you try it sometime, Sam?
By golly, I sure would like to.
Well, when you make up your mind to make the trip, let me know. I'll speak to the engineer. He might let you ride in a cab.
Say, would you now?
You and the law standing so close together, Sam, make quite a picture.
Oh, listen to him.
Oh, you never want to get in a card game with him, Sergeant.
Now, don't worry about that. Did you have a nice trip?
Yep, yeah. It's the only way to travel, believe me. Ah, it's wonderful what's being done nowadays. Only took me 2 days to come from Watchbar.
2 days. You hear that?
Yeah, yes, indeed. Say, isn't that George Wilkins coming along there?
I believe it is.
Well, he's certainly in a hurry.
Sergeant Preston, I've been looking all over for you.
What is it, George? You look as if you'd seen a ghost.
I wish it had been a ghost. Mose Andrews has been killed.
Killed?
Mose Andrews?
Where?
Right beside the railroad tracks on the other side of the lake. I just came from there.
How?
Shot. Right through the heart. And Sergeant.
Yes?
And Duncan's scarf was caught under him.
Duncan? Why?
And I didn't touch anything. I raced my dogs to get over here. Better come and have a look for yourself.
I'll be right with you, George.
Hey, I mind if I come along, Sergeant? Old Mose was a friend of mine.
Oh, come if you like.
On King, on you husky!
Down there, right by the tracks.
Oh, King, you husky!
See? I didn't touch him. All I did was to make sure... Well, I thought he might have passed out or something. You can see Duncan's scarf.
Yes. Well, he hasn't been dead long.
Well, how can you tell?
His body's just beginning to get cold. I'd say you found him shortly after the murder, George.
Gee, if I'd have come along sooner, I might have saved his life.
Or lost your own.
Looks like Duncan did it all right.
But why would he... Help me lift old Mose here, boys.
Yeah, sure.
I hoped old Mose walk away from many a fight. Never expected to...
I know what you mean, Lance.
That's it.
Don't make much difference whether we handle him easy or not. Somehow I just can't believe it.
There. Now to get back to Train Junction. All right, King. Get the dogs up, fella.
On King, on you husky!
Lance and George went back to Train Junction on snowshoes.
It was a strange funeral procession for the old miner, Mose Andrews, that filed its way into town.
Well, I guess you'll want to see Dan.
Yes. Well, Lance and me will take care of the body then. Mose didn't have any family.
That's a good idea.
We'll see you in. Say, here comes Dan.
He's a cool one. Look, he's coming right over to us as if nothing had happened.
Thought I heard you say you were leaving Train Junction, Sergeant Preston.
I won't be for quite a while now, Dan.
Why don't you come out to the camp? What happened to Mose?
You know what happened to him.
What do you mean?
Mose was found out near the railroad tracks on the far side of Lake Skillet with a bullet through his heart.
Oh.
Yes. What's more, it was your scarf that was found pinned under him.
I've seen some mighty cool ones in my day, but never
It won't do you
anybody-
much good denying it, Dan.
Denying what? I don't know what you're talking about.
You mean
I
that...
mean, I don't know what you're getting at. My scarf was found beside Mose. I didn't put it there.
Well, maybe you didn't put it there, but you might have dropped it.
Wait a minute, boys. Wait a minute. Dan, where have you been for the last 3 hours?
Why, in my cabin, Sergeant.
Anybody with you?
No, sir.
Kind of strange you weren't spending your time at the cafe like you usually do.
I don't know what this is all about.
Well, it looks like you're suspected of murder, Dan.
Murder? You mean you think
I didn't say I thought so, Dan. It's only that all the evidence we have, and that's a scarf, points to you.
I wasn't near the railroad, I tell you. I've been in my cabin.
You can't prove it.
I give you my word.
Seems to me one man's word ain't good enough when a murder's been committed.
Well, Sergeant...
I haven't finished the investigation, Dan.
You had no reason to wish Mose dead.
No? What about the argument you had with him?
Huh?
What argument?
I didn't have...
I heard you and Mose talking last week. If I ever saw two men having harder words, I don't remember it.
I haven't seen Mose for more than a month. You got the wrong man.
Saw them just as plain as I see you now, Sergeant.
That's a lie.
Where was that, Lance?
In front of Dan's cabin. Wasn't another soul in sight, so I figured it was best to let them finish it themselves. Then I never thought it'd come to this.
Of all the yellow lying...
you better be careful, Dan. You ain't in a position to be calling your names, you know.
You ought to be put under arrest. Who knows who will be shooting next?
I'm not arresting him yet.
You're not?
No. Dan, I put you on your honor. If you leave Train Junction, you know as well as I do, it'll only be another card stacked against you.
Gee, Sergeant. You think I'm not anxious to find out who's trying to frame me? You don't have to worry about me leaving town.
In the meantime, King and I'll do some investigating.
King?
My lead dog here.
That's none of my business, but I don't think you're taking this seriously enough.
You're right, Lance. It isn't any of your business. Well, I'll see you later. All right, King. Get the dogs up. On, King! On, you husky!
Seems to me we ought to take care of old Mose, Lance.
Yeah. I wonder what he meant. Investigate.
I don't know. There sure are a lot of things about this I'd like to know.
You? Well, you've as good as got a noose around your neck right now.
And I've taken as much as I'm
going to... Hey, wait
you.
a minute. You're on your good behavior, remember, Dan?
It's a good thing for this varmint that I am. I'll lend your hand with Mose, George.
And then I'm going to the cabin. I ain't been home for 3 days.
All right.
So long, George.
I never did like that fella. Well, where do you aim to put the body?
Meanwhile, Sergeant Preston and King were approaching Skillet Lake.
Footprints should still be there. Ho, King. Ho, you huskies. All right now, fella. Let's see. Enough prints here. Thing I don't understand is how, if Dan did commit the murder, he'd do it so stupidly. He'd have planned it more carefully. We might have missed something when we were here before, King. I think that... A set of prints leading to the lake. They go down to the ice. I thought I noticed these before. They're cut just about as deeply as the others. But where'd they come from? Oh, more of the same prints. But they're deeper. As if the man were carrying something heavy. Yet they begin here. The only sled tracks besides mine and George's are the ones Andrew's sled cut coming in from the north. Could the murderer have been riding with Mose? King, I think I've got it. Lance's tracks and the tracks leading down to the lake are identical. Could he have... King, get the dogs up. We're going across the lake. That's it, fella. To the left.
Leading the dogs, King raced across the ice-covered lake. As they reached the bank, the front of the sled runners struck a clean surface.
Hold, King! All right, hold, you huskies, hold! Well, what is it, fella, huh? Skis. Just as I thought. The murderer came across the lake on these skis. These footprints lead up to the tracks and then stop. King, I think we've found the man who's tried to frame Dan for a murder he committed. On, King! On, you huskies!
That night, in George McCarthy's cabin at the edge of Train Junction.
Well, I reckon we're all here now.
And would you mind telling me just why in the middle of the night?
Take it easy now, Lance. I only did what the sergeant told me to.
You must have a good reason.
He better have.
I do have, Lance.
What are you doing with those skis, Sergeant?
Mighty nice-looking pair.
Well, I asked George to bring all of you together because I want to get your fingerprints.
Fingerprints? What's that got to do with...
You see, I found these skis on the bank of the lake. They had evidently been pushed under the snow. The wind had blown back the snow, and when King and I crossed the ice, the sled struck them.
Meaning?
Meaning that the man who murdered Mose Andrews used these skis to cross the lake. Then he pushed them under the snow. He forgot one thing, however. The snow won't erase fingerprints. All right, George, you ready?
Sure. What do you want me to do?
Put your finger on this pad right here.
Like this?
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Now, over on this paper. There.
You want my left hand, too?
No, the right will be enough. Now, Lance.
You ain't fingerprinting me. Why, it's an insult.
It's no insult to an innocent man.
It's your problem to find a guilty man.
That's just what I'm doing. I'm sorry, Lance.
What?
You'll have to be fingerprinted like everyone else.
You're wrong.
Hey, put that gun away.
What the... Line up there against the wall. All of you.
So, I was right. You did cross the lake on those skis.
Yeah, I crossed all right. On top of the ice, and you're going to be under it inside of 30 minutes.
You jumped off the train when it stopped for water. You jumped off at the spot where you killed Mose. All you had to do was stand there and wait for him.
You seem to have all the answers. Go on, Preston, then what did I do?
As the train was pulling out, Andrews came driving in just as you knew he would. The engine made enough noise to cover the shot, so you waited a few minutes. You were lucky because it had begun to get dark.
Yeah?
Then you went down to the riverbank. You used something for a sail. I don't know what that was. The wind blew you across the lake on these skis here. The train, by that time, was stopped. It was a simple thing to climb back in your window and get off at the station where I saw you. Right?
I give you credit.
But why would he want to frame me?
You got the answer for that, too?
Yes, I think I do. Dan, you and Andrews both struck gold. Lance knew neither of you has a family.
And this is just as good a way as any to get those claims. You're right, I did want to frame Dan. I figured I could kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah, but why...
I've had enough talk.
A criminal is always caught because he makes a mistake. You've made two of them, Lance.
What do you mean?
You made your first one when you planted Dan's scarf beside Mose. You've made your second one by forgetting my helper.
Helper? You don't have one, and if you think you can get away with it... No, get him down!
Good work, fella.
You're the smartest dog I ever seen.
Saved our lives.
Tie him up, Dan.
You bet I will. That's a good thing you found them skis, Sergeant.
Yes. They put the story together for me.
Why, with his fingerprints on them...
I didn't find any fingerprints on them.
What?
You mean...
I mean your own conscience helped to convict you. I knew how you committed the crime. I wanted your admission of your guilt. This was the best way I knew of getting it.
Well, I'll be.
Yes, King. The case is closed.
Challenge of the Yukon, a copyrighted feature of the Challenge of the Yukon Incorporated, brought to you every Saturday at this same time, originated in the transcription studios of WXYZ Detroit. The characters and events in tonight's drama were fictitious. Bob Hite speaking. This is the Michigan Radio Network.
Actually, a pretty well-developed story for only 15 minutes. Impressive, if you ask me. Challenge of the Yukon was a long-running radio series that began on Detroit station WXYZ. The series was first heard on February 3, 1938, and ran until January 6, 1955. The program was an adventure series about Sergeant William Preston of the Northwest Mounted Police and his sled dog, Yukon King. They fought evildoers in the northern wilderness during the gold rush of the 1890s. Preston, according to radio historian Jim Harmon, first joined the Mounties to capture his father's killer, and when he was successful, he was promoted to sergeant. Very similar to the Lone Ranger. Preston's staunchest ally, who was arguably the true star of the show, and indeed often did more work than he did, was the brave Alaskan husky Yukon King. Now, there's some confusion regarding King's actual breed. The producers seem to use Malamute and husky interchangeably. At least once, Preston answered the question Malamute as to the breed. In the early radio shows, the cry of "On you Huskies" would alternate with "On you Malamutes" from show to show. Challenge of the Yukon began as a 15-minute serial. When the program acquired a sponsor, Quaker Oats, it changed to a half-hour format and moved to ABC. The title changed from Challenge of the Yukon to Sergeant Preston of the Yukon in 1951, and remained under that name through the end of the radio series and on into television until 1955.
Not so many years ago, tomato soup and cream of tomato were unusual dishes, enjoyed very much, but not very often. Today, of all the soups in the world, tomato soup is the one most often served. Not because women have taken to making tomato soup frequently. No, on the contrary, few housewives ever attempt it anymore. There's just one reason for tomato soup's popularity, and it is this: the magic, matchless flavor of Campbell's tomato soup. There's a lively verve, a dashing zest about this flavor that people take to at once and come back to and enjoy again and again. The first racy taste of it has a way of arousing a desire to eat, and yet there's a pleasant feeling of satisfaction when the last spoonful is gone. So this soup is a happy choice for the main dish at lunchtime or at supper, and it also is a fine way to start the day's main meal. Serve it sometimes, too, as cream of tomato, made with milk instead of water. You can always be sure that it will be received with pleasure, because this, of all soups, is the one people like to have most often: Campbell's tomato soup.
That was episode number 483, and we only have 17 more until 500. This time I want to thank Mike Hardcord, GhostGhoul, I Am Therefore Leave Me Alone, and of course Paul Hart for taking part today. You were awesome. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.